Mel Gibson might not be the most stable person out there, but you know what? He knows how to make a damn good film. Hacksaw Ridge is the newest movie directed by Mel Gibson, and quite frankly, he hasn't really done a lot of movies, not as much as I thought he did. Yeah, including Hacksaw Ridge, he's only directed 5, and quite frankly, including Hacksaw Ridge, I've only seen 2 of his films. The other movie being Apocalypto, which, yeah, I know, I haven't seen Braveheart yet. It sounds like blasphemy, but haven't seen it yet. I really want to, along with the other 2 films that he's directed. But anyway, Hacksaw Ridge is based off of a true story about a war hero in World War II. Our main character is Desmond Doss, who is played by Andrew Garfield. I would definitely say our main character is a religious person, and there is one particular 10 commandment that he is destined not to break, and that is, thou shalt not kill. In fact, you can also say he has his own personal commandment, and that is never to touch a gun. But despite this, he wants to make an effort in the war. There's a really big war, World War II in fact, and he feels obligated to help out with the war efforts. But like he says in the movie, instead of taking lives, he wants to save lives. He wants to be a medic. He was told he can become a medic as long as he has the proper training and doesn't even have to bring a gun with him. Unfortunately, the place he goes to, the drill camp that he goes to, wants him to touch a gun, wants him to have basic rifle training, which of course he has vowed never to touch a gun. But as you've probably guessed by the trailer, he does eventually win and is able to go into battle without a gun. And as the trailer reminds us, he is an American hero that never fired a single bullet and was only in, I think, 1 battle. Well, if the movie is as true to the real-life story, then yeah, he was pretty much in 1 battle, give or take. Now, I don't want to spoil too much of the film, even though I've probably said a little bit too much of it. I've probably gone through at least half of the film, but then again, the trailer does as well. To be completely honest, this was an awe-inspiring movie. The acting in this film all across the board is simply astounding. You got Andrew Garfield in this movie playing just as good, if not even better, as our main character than he was in 99 Homes, which I found him an absolute astounding watch. He honestly does give a performance of a lifetime. Now maybe this is easy for me to say because I haven't really seen all the films he's been in, but best performance I've ever seen him do. He's a completely likable character, very charismatic, and I have to say, he definitely gives a real great performance with the internal conflict and the crazy stuff he has to go through, and just how much he has to stand up for his beliefs, or at least his own personal belief not to pick up a gun no matter the cost, and not compromise, which is really hard to do. This is not one of those movies where there's a change about the character and that's how you get the character development. This is one of those stories about a character not changing, which can be done and is still character development, in my opinion. Because I'd like to note that character development isn't technically just an actual change in the character, but rather the ability to change and given the opportunity to change whether he decides to change or not. And there are definitely moments in this film where Andrew Garfield, or at least Desmond Doss, could have easily changed and could have compromised, but he stuck to his guns and stuck to his beliefs. You got Hugo Weaving as the father of Desmond Doss, who is a drunkard who has been in World War I, had seen several atrocities, lost all of his friends, and became drunk and violent, and he is absolutely amazing in this film. He could have easily gone down the road as just the stereotypical drunk, abusive father, but there is definitely complexity to him and a well-acted performance of Hugo Weaving. Teresa Palmer is a nurse that our main character meets, and it's love at first sight, at least for our main character. She was really good. You might remember her from Lights Out or even Warm Bodies if you can think back that far. Actually, that's really not that far at all. But when you see enough movies as I have, it feels like it was years and years ago. I love the chemistry and the romance between these two characters. They both acted extremely well. There was an awkward, almost realistic sort of way that it's handled of this shy guy not knowing exactly what to say and kind of, well, it's the same sort of awkward romance that you might see in other movies, but just done extremely well, extremely likable, and just plain adorable. But most importantly, very believable in this movie. You also got Luke Bracey, who I was completely surprised in this movie because I didn't recognize it was him, because the other two movies I've seen him in is frickin' The November Man and the main character of Point Break. Yeah, he's in this movie. He is the soldier that looks like he's going to be the bully, looks like he's going to be the badass hero and sort of talk down to our main character. He's the one in the trailer that hits our main character, who calls him a coward. He surprised the hell out of me, not only because I didn't recognize him and didn't realize it was him, but he did a really good job despite being in those other two movies. I feel like those other two movies were just sort of him, just paychecks, I guess, because he actually did extremely well in this movie. And it does play out very predictably if you know the kind of story where here's a hero that doesn't back down, he stands up for his beliefs, while someone else is trying to convince him otherwise, call him a coward, bully him a little bit. And you just know that once wartime happens, something's going to happen where he's going to earn the respect of the bully and they're going to become friends. It is done extremely well in this movie. And as an added bonus, you also have Sam Worthington, who was really good in this movie as the lieutenant, I believe. I think he was the lieutenant. And Vince Vaughn was a blast to watch in this movie as the drill sergeant because he's got some really funny, amazing lines, but he's got that drill sergeant serious sort of tone. It's just actually really amazing. And it's also amazing to see that he can be a badass, and he actually fights in the battle, and he's really good. Now, I knew this movie would be long, I knew it would be over 2 hours, but what actually surprised me is just how much it goes into before the war happens, before he goes to battle. It takes at least half of the movie, the first half of the movie, to develop this character, to get us an understanding of why he's like the way he is, and that's including the boot camp sequence as well, being the first half of the movie. At the same time, I can understand some people being bored a little bit by this first half, because some people are going to want to go to the movie to see the action, to see the war. That's what we want to see most. And that first half is all developing his character, showing the romance he has with our main love interest, planting the seeds of why he is the way he is and why he believes the way he does, and showing the conflict in boot camp where he just wants to get through without touching a gun because he is going to be a medic and he was told he doesn't have to bring a gun. It's not required to be trained with a gun if he's going to be a medic. But I can understand some people being a little bit more bored with this because, let's face it, the trailer shows that he's able to go into battle without a gun. The trailer gives all that away, so there's not really suspense, there's not really a surprise, really. But me personally, I really loved the first half of the film and just how well they developed the character. It gave us exactly the right amount of scenes we needed to plant the seeds to show how he is the way he is. Other than the first exact scene of the movie where it shows the war, it's showing a battle in slow motion, our hero is being carried away while he's narrating some Bible verse or something religious, which is honestly exactly what I expected from this movie. But after that scene, you see him as a young kid with his brother, and you see a bunch of scenes that developed his character and develop his belief on being very serious about not killing and realizing that's the worst sin of all, at least for him. It's hard to believe the second half really shines that much brightly over a great first half. But God, when you see those war scenes, it is brutal, amazing, and just you're just in awe. At least I was. Many, if not almost all of the battle scenes in this film play out like a horror movie. So basically, it's like Fury, where it is brutal, graphic, and it is like a horror story. And it makes sense that it would be like this, because this is a movie about a main character that doesn't want to touch a gun and does not want to kill, wants to save lives. So of course, the battle scenes are going to be graphic, they're going to be horrific. And of course you know it's going to be graphic because it's a war movie and Mel Gibson is directing it. Of course it's going to be graphic. Now I will be honest, with Fury, it stayed horrific and graphic. It really showed the horrors of war because that was its theme. It was a theme of people changing from the graphic and brutal violence of war. Fury stuck to its guns more so than Hacksaw Ridge, because there was one point as the first battle progresses and as it gets towards the end of the battle, it becomes less of a horror scene and more of your typical action epic war scene. And I think to some people this might be a little hypocritical, because here's a film about a guy that's not wanting to touch a gun, wants to save lives, and while battles are horrific and really gruesome, it eventually progresses into more of a conventional wartime movie with epic and glorifying action. But I didn't feel this as hypocritical. You know why? Because I feel that this is one of those movies that's not only glorifying our main hero for not killing and actually saving about 75 lives in this movie, I think it still wants to pay its respects to soldiers that actually did their job and still killed people as well. It wants to show the bravery of both sides rather than just our main hero. Or at least that's how I saw the film. And not only is the horror elements the graphic, gruesome violence of the war itself, it's also the fear of the unknown enemy. Now, I didn't feel that the Japanese soldiers were depicted as complete monsters. And it may not have that scene that Fury did where a German soldier saw our main hero, saw that he was hiding, and decided not to tell his fellow soldiers so that that one American soldier would survive. It doesn't have that scene. Instead, there's a scene where Andrew Garfield actually saves one of the wounded Japanese soldiers, at least one of them. It pretty much has that one required scene to show that, okay, we're not thinking our enemy Japanese soldiers as just plain enemies and antagonists. They're still human. But like I'm trying to say, the Japanese soldiers were added as the horror element of this film because there's more of a supernatural, this unknown enemy that we don't know much about, and how they can just come in hordes and just come out of nowhere, it seems. How they just don't go down, and they seem to have a more supernatural horror element to it. Now, I'm not saying it's actual supernatural, but the people that come back from the war, that come back from the battle and tell the newcomers about the Japanese soldiers, it's almost like campfire stories on how they depict these Japanese soldiers as something supernatural and something very hard to kill. Which is really gratifying to see in this film because it is a religious film. I'm not going to lie about that. It's definitely religious. It didn't feel preachy to me at all. Trust me, I've seen much more preachy Christian films like God's Not Dead 2 and several other films that I didn't like at all. This didn't feel preachy to me, but I can understand some people finding it too preachy. You're going to go into it with certain expectations, and if you go with certain expectations, you're going to find what you expected. But to add more to the religious side of this film, there are moments and events and actions that our hero takes that feel like stuff of legend, that feel like something of a tall tale or a myth, and it's hard to believe that someone could do the things he does, even though the facts might all be there and it actually might be true. It's actually so weird, and it sounds like an oxymoron, it sounds like a contradiction, but to me there was this epicness, this mythology to it, this sort of legendary feel that this movie had where in the back of your mind you're thinking, there's no way this could be true, this has to be exaggeration, but at the same time, because of how it's acted, because of how it's formed, because of how it's directed, you feel it's real. You feel like, wow, this really happened, this is freaking amazing. It really does feel that this is stuff of legend. For almost the entire second half of the film, my mouth was dropped open and I was in complete awe. This is easily one of the best films I've seen all year, and honestly, currently, it might be my #1 film of 2016. Well, at least until I see something even better that might knock it off. Maybe when I see Arrival on Tuesday, maybe that will knock Hacksaw Ridge off the top spot. Well, I've loved all of the films that the director of Arrival has done, so most likely I'll love that film as well. So if Hacksaw Ridge is at my #1 spot at the moment, then you know just as well what the score is going to be. I'm going to give Hacksaw Ridge 5 stars. So, did you see Hacksaw Ridge? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if not, what is your favorite wartime movie of all time? It could be any war. Just don't do Holocaust stuff because that's its own category. Holocaust, I don't feel, is a war movie. It's its own thing. But any movie that depicts war, what is your favorite? And if you like this movie and you want to see more, please subscribe and check out my movie reviews of 2015 and 2016. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.